Hey guys! I wanted to have another video up quicker than this, and I actually scripted a whole different video, but I realized it was literally just me aimlessly rambling for way too long. I wasn't satisfied with how it was going, and I didn't really know how to fix it, so I put it on the back burner. I also want to take the time to clarify that I will still be doing the stuff that I normally do on this channel, so that means animatics, video edits, fan songs, fan stuff like that. So don't be like, well, that's not what I signed up for, unsubscribe, because all that jazz is still going to be in circulation. And let's be honest, I didn't really post all that frequently to begin with, so this is objectively going to be an upgrade, not gonna lie. But anyway, with Art Fight rapidly approaching, I'm having to brush up on the character design of a couple of OCs. So I thought I'd take y'all along for the ride. Today I'm going to be redesigning my character, Mavis Hannigan, who is, right now, full disclosure, my pride and joy. I am a writer dad that picks favorites. I love this character, they've been with me for years, and I never really get tired of developing her further and further into something that hopefully actually feels real. I'm going to be using her as our example for showing you guys when and how to go about redesigning an OC. So you'll learn a bit more about her as the video goes on. And if you're one of those people who's like, I designed an OC once, that's enough, I make sure I get it right in the first place. Redesign them anyway, as a treat. Just doing it for an exercise can help unlock ideas you never would have thought of and reveal flaws you didn't know the old design even had. Okay, I'm gonna try to talk, so I'm gonna try not to talk so fast. I was thinking like, okay, this script's long, I can talk as fast as I want now. Okay, no, I can barely understand myself. Sorry about that. So, anyway, before we start, I just want to be fully transparent and say that this tutorial will not super emphasize shape language really heavily. Don't get me wrong, that's a big part of character design, but to put it simply, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I'll touch on it briefly here and there, but there are plenty of tutorials that zero in on that topic specifically that you can seek out too. Also, obviously, I'm not an industry professional, so the game is probably going to be different if you're making design choices for someone else's character in the context of a professional project. Though as far as I've learned, not by much in terms of the actual doing of it, if that makes sense. Good design practices are good design practices. Alright, let's get started. So the first thing we gotta cover is, when is it even time to redesign an OC? And mark my words, that time will come. You are almost never going to have a character that doesn't look different than when you started, because you're almost never gonna have a story that doesn't look different than when it started. There's also no limit to how many times you've got to do this. There's no shame. In fact, this version of Mavis I'm fixing right now was made only a few months ago. The number one way you'll know it's time for a change is that something just doesn't feel right. You look at the character sheet or drawings of them and say to yourself, that's not my character. And there's honestly no hard and fast rule for this, it's really just vibes. Another way to figure this out is to see if your sketches and art of the character in practice don't exactly match the design sheet that you made. That's a sign that your heart isn't really in the official version that you tried to present. Though keep in mind, this could just be that you've got to get better at consistency. Like if you're sure you're happy with the design, but like the pictures you're drawing aren't looking like that, just, like I said, maybe you just don't really know how to replicate it very well. That's a skill you gotta learn too. That's a different video. One that I'm not gonna make because I'm not very great at that. Alright. The next sign is that the current design or elements of it are simply just not serving the story. You've got to find a good balance of functional and symbolic choices in their look. It's really up to you which one you want to emphasize more, but that should be guided by how grounded in reality you want the story and art direction to be. Something like Our Flag Means Death can get away with having crop tops and Crocs, I guess, in the age of pirates, but Black Sails keeps things much more in the realm of at least what we imagine pirates wore at the time, because it's a much grittier story. So with that, let's put this into practice for Mavis. What do we do about these problems? First of all, let's start with an easy step, and that's figure out what you want to keep. So for me, the thing that's stayed consistent throughout is the coloring. Dark hair, blue eyes, and blue or blue adjacent clothes, at least at the start. These details are just how I naturally see the character in my mind, and they mean something to me. But keep in mind, even then, these things can still change. Don't be so sure that they're set in stone because you might discover something that you like even better. The next avenue is to actually reconsider old designs if there's multiple. What are some things you got rid of in the past that could serve your new vision now? I experimented with lightening her hair a bit, but I just wasn't feeling it, and I went back to original shade of dark brown. You can see that in the old design that we're working off of now. Same with the length and the overall cut. For this most recent old version, I originally gave her like a flatter jaw, I guess. I don't really know how to describe it, but I'm not really feeling that change, so I'm gonna go back closer to the original head shape, like before this version. I feel like I'm getting confusing with like the word original and like what exactly that means, because there's like multiple versions of Mavis. I'm sorry if you get lost in that. I'm trying my best. But anyway, so I'm going to redesign Mavis. I'll make commentary on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and you guys will learn by following along. We're gonna Bob Ross this. So the first thing I always start with is the head area, because 90% of the time, that's what sets the tone for the whole design for me. When you're in the planning stages, just trying things out, you can be as rough as you please so long as it's still readable to you. So long as you have a good idea of what you're looking at and can make judgments on it, it's all good. You can also just spruce it up later. I usually have a couple of yes shapes and a couple of no shapes in mind. Like, I know this character's not going to have a Jorgen von Strangle chin. Then experiment with the yes ones until something just clicks. This step didn't take long for me here, but if you need to fill up a whole page, totally do that. It would probably honestly be a better practice. Alright, so one of the things I was dissatisfied with was how wide her head looked. It just wasn't her. So I settled on a similar kind of planchette shape, but softer and more of a pointed chin, if you will. I feel like this is also more easily replicable. That's a word, I know English. Which is something you gotta always be thinking about. Is this also where I figure out the hair? I couldn't tell if I didn't like the hair or if I actually did like it and it just wasn't working with the surrounding elements. This rough sketch exercise helped me put it into a different perspective, and I do indeed like the old hair. And again, it's easy to replicate with basic shapes over and over. Now I'm going to move on to actually drawing the character, and you're probably like, wait a minute, Elliot, that seemed really fast. And I'd say it really depends on the character and what your current goal is. For Mavis, I don't really feel the need to sketch out multiple outfits because her basic blouse, plaid skirt, and cardigan getup is how I've always imagined the character in terms of everyday attire. And I'm just going to try to capture what she looks like most of the time right now. Her uniform, if you will. This is a character who wears multiple outfits throughout, so eventually I'll dedicate separate time to building up her wardrobe. Now keep in mind, this is not a post sheet or an animator's guide. We're just trying to cement what the character basically looks like for ourselves. Though oftentimes preliminaries are a nice thing to have in certain portfolios, it just shows that you know how to visually think things through. So consider, I guess, kind of, if not doing this as you go, sprucing it up later, making it look more, not necessarily more professional. Like, I don't think it needs to look like super clean, but just like, I don't know, like you look through professional character design portfolios, see what their preliminaries look like. Maybe consider making your work kind of emulate that kind of stuff or that kind of format. If you're planning on putting this in a portfolio, you could totally just use this for your own personal stuff, your hobby things. You can tell which things I'm like ad-libbing and which things I've scripted already. It's like, there's a reason why I make scripts for my videos. Okay, huge important consideration. How does a character carry themselves? That might seem like it has nothing to do with character design, but it has everything to do with it. Not only will it often directly inform your design choices, but it's a key visual for your character in pretty much every context because you want them to feel alive. Garnet is a strong, confident character who rarely needs to question her next move. Her stance is sturdy and stable. When she is hunched over or shaky, we know immediately something is off or that this is a different Garnet than we're used to. Luce is excitable, eager, and friendly. She looks dynamic and lively even when standing as simply as possible. She's just so full of spunk, you know, she's got that little ADHD middle schooler energy. The pose is not something I took into consideration for Mavis' previous design, and it shows. She's basically just standing there, so let's fix that. I decided casting her gaze downward would help communicate that this character is reserved. If your character is super cheerful, consider them looking forward with a big smile. Nervous or suspicious, glancing over their shoulder or to the side, stuff like that. And then I did keep their hands behind their back for the same reason. That was a step in the right direction previously. Okay, Now, I need to say this. Don't do that thing where you hide your character's hands because you don't want to draw hands. I'm doing this because it genuinely looks like it makes sense for the character. I have plenty of other characters who are exuberant as fuck, and they're gonna be having their hands all over the freaking place, alright? Don't just avoid drawing hands. Be honest with yourself. Is there an actual reason to have them out of the picture? Now, with what I just said, it would probably make sense to hunch them over, but I didn't because Mavis isn't just withdrawn, and honestly, low-key depressed. You want to be careful not to just take one part of them and completely run with it for the entirety of the design, if you know what I mean. Unless they're like a pretty, super, incredibly straightforward character, or at least like for the most part, like Shadow Weaver is like, okay, yeah, that's like an evil kid. That is a villain design. There is not, even though she becomes kind of more complex later, like for the most part, like that is one mean bitch and she looks like it. But anyway, Mavis is standing up straight because she's dutiful. She was raised not to question authority, even against her own interest. Now let's get to the clothes. I originally wanted Mavis's skirt to have this kind of upturned finish. She's a character that could be pretty bristly and has had to put walls up. I don't know why, I was just thinking pointy. I decided this design wasn't really the way to go for a couple of reasons. One, triangular shape language is more commonly associated with somewhat menacing characteristics, but can also be divine. Although Mavis keeps people at a distance, she doesn't really do so through aggressive means. Or even really like super mean girl means, I guess, because I'm just now thinking of that one girl character from, why was I gonna say Jimmy Neutron? From Fairly Odd Parents. She's kind of got some like sharp edges to her. But anyway, that would more describe my partner's character and Mavis's love interest, Lucy Maywell. They have the same type of problems, but very different perspectives and very different ways that they cope. The other reason is a practical one, and that is that this is a series set in the 60s with the characters mostly in school. A skirt of this length would get her immediately dress-coded, and Mavis is not a girl who rocks the boat or gets in trouble. Well, not now at least. Not anymore. So I made the skirt longer, and now this also gives me the chance to show that this character is hiding something. She isn't what she seems and isn't being true to herself. Lucy may actively push people away, but Mavis prefers to be a chameleon. This also emphasizes her Christian values of conformity and modesty, as being the child of a Baptist pastor has a massive impact on her life and her sense of self. If possible, like I said, you want your design choices to communicate several things instead of just one. But don't worry, you don't have to do this for literally everything. Sometimes the curtains are just blue, and that's okay. This is also a great time to mention a broad but invaluable tip. Design inspiration can come from anywhere. Really take a close look at the media you enjoy and try to think critically about why they made the artistic choices that they did. For me, Shizuo Oshimi's Inside Mari was how I realized that skirt length could tell you a great deal about the wearer. A manga I'd recommend to everyone and no one. Please read this. Please don't. You may also have multiple in-universe designs for the same person that serve different purposes. My design for adult Mavis, in her past life, but it's the future and also still herself. It's complicated. Anyway, she has sharper elements because she's grown more bitter. As a mother, her children are everything to her, but her own trauma and anxieties cause pain for them too. Another version that follows similar logic is this one, where she's given the chance to freely explore being in a queer space. The joy of it scares her. She's on the brink of discovery and feels a lot like a cornered animal. Also, apparently vertical lines are a symbol of growth, which I didn't know at the time, but is a pretty cool detail. You've probably noted these visual elements I'm pointing out are pretty subtle. That's because I don't really have a very exaggerated art style that accommodates big, noticeable shapes. Though I am trying to push those boundaries a bit more because, honestly, that's really what people want to see, and it's a lot more readable. I see why. Like, it's like, I mean, look at this lineup. You know immediately what these characters are about. It's nice. She's got white socks neatly pulled up, again, understands the unspoken rules and follows them well, and Mary Jane's because Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I just think they're cool. Great 60s vibe, readable from a distance, and making them the chunky kind that's easier to run around in sets her up for a hopeful future. Got some fun things planned for her. She's not gonna have this overwhelming weight and sadness forever. There's not really much to say about the shirt. I mean, it's really just a stark white blouse, though it is very neat. It's got a noticeably feminine touch with the puffy sleeves, all that good stuff. If you've got a very plain element that just serves the purpose of matching with the stuff that's really the focus, then still make sure it fits your character and their circumstances. Mavis would not be wearing a men's button-down because that's not what's expected of her. I don't know why I didn't mention this before, but it's probably the most important thing. Don't design a character before you write them. This may seem obvious to a lot of you, but there were so many times as a young artist I would just think of a character and just thought they looked cool and then was like, okay, where can I put you? If you're trying to do this even remotely seriously, don't do that. For one very important and concise reason, your character should be a person first and foremost, not just a cool drawing. And, for the cardigan, I have no fucking clue. She just has a blue cardigan. She always has had a blue cardigan. It feels like this is a blanket to her Linus. I have no justification behind it. She is just not Mavis to me unless she owns this blue cardigan. If you have something like that where you don't have a reason, it just feels like fate, you don't have to by any means, but it's really fun to explore ways you can make it significant to them or their story. Maybe this cardigan was gifted to her by her dad, and wearing it less and less shows the bittersweet reality of needing to let go of a family who doesn't accept you. Maybe those wicked blackout sunglasses your character has covers up laser eyes that they can use to see into people's dreams. I don't know, let your imagination run buck fucking wild. Or alternatively, it could just spice up the silhouette I mentioned. But then again, obviously the silhouette should fit the character in the first place. I like to do this before I start coloring, just to make sure that the shape of the character is something I'm satisfied with. So, let's see, I would say pretty good. It's not anything super exaggerated. I'm of the opinion that it doesn't have to be. Just personally, don't take this as any sort of stone-hard philosophy. Characters don't all have to be drastically different from each other in order for each of them to clearly look unique in a lineup. Now, in terms of posture, pose, stuff like that, you don't want them to be doing extremely similar things in that front. That should be warded off naturally, though, by writing characters that have distinct personalities, so none of them seem superfluous. So you shouldn't have to worry about that in that area. Honestly, just worry about the original writing itself. So already, this is so much more going for it than I had before. You can tell pretty easily from the shape that this is at the very least a shy person. I mean, you know what, they're not. It doesn't look like there's going to be a character jumping around going gee willikers behind this block of color. That stands in contrast to the first one, which doesn't really tell you anything about the way this person carries himself, and isn't really even that visually interesting. It mostly just sticks to one smooth, standard girl shape, I guess. Ooh, okay, so here's one of the things I was certain I was never going to change, and then I did. I added red to her coloring. I always imagined her as a pretty monochromatic character, really got that blue thing going on, but that can get really stale for plain human characters in regular clothes. I threw some red on her skirt and made her iconic ribbon that I always thought would stay blue forever, red. I also turned the little bow loops up a bit. Try to always look for ways that you can make their silhouette more distinct. What can you do that makes them recognizable against everyone else in your story? Like I keep saying over and over, make them look distinct. Also, this may sound silly, but I like the new ribbon because it low-key kind of looks like implied devil horns, and this girl's got Baptist guilt just oozing out of her pores. So this right here is my toxic trait. Color theory, for some reason, is so convoluted to me, and I'm not very good at just raw picking colors that look great on the first try. So I almost always add some sort of overlay layer when I'm all finished. Okay, so we're leaving the realm of the script. Ooh, okay, this is gonna be a bitch for me to edit. Because I realized that I ended this, like, super fucking abruptly and, like, barely went into the color, which is a really important part. Okay, so, coloring. Be intentional with it. Honestly, I don't really have much more advice to give other than that because, like I said, I'm really not good at color theory, but I know a lot of people, and I used to be like this too, who they kind of just color their characters based on what they think would look nice, which is a factor in it too. Like, I definitely do that somewhat, but the colors that you like the colors that you like, just like your general favorite colors, or the colors that you just think look good together, they might not fit the character, and they might not even fit the art direction you're going for. So, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna touch on this a bit. So whatever visual story your character is a part of, like a comic, a series, like a novel illustration, stuff like that, their design and their coloring should make them look like they're a part of that world. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to have a comic that has very, like, kind of subdued, desaturated colors, if that makes sense, and then design a character that has, like, very, like, bright, neon-ish colors in their design. Even if you're not, like, drawing or coloring it in the same style as they're going to be in, although, honestly, why would you do that? That doesn't really make sense to me. You need to really understand what they're actually going to look like. So just make sure that you're choosing your colors in a way that makes sense for the world and the character, not just throwing together colors that you personally like. So for Mavis's story, which is The End Was Brand New, that's the title of it, my partner and I were probably thinking of going with a coloring style that looks a lot like Steven Universe. We both really like that show, and we think the colors are absolutely gorgeous, like so amazing. As a matter of fact, please watch this video here if you want like a very awesome deep dive about how the art direction for this show came to be and all the wonderful people who went into it and put their hard work into this show. Anyway, my partner and I were thinking about kind of emulating these colors because honestly, they just look good in like almost any context. Like, I can't really see a situation where they would look awkward, and also it's just like honestly our personal preference. But however, that art style is kind of a more saturated one than I'm used to, so I might actually have to go back and make this character a little brighter. Although honestly, I don't really think I'm going to have to, because we're not gonna we're not trying to, like, do exactly the coloring of Steven Universe, if that makes sense. Like, we want to kind of use that more as a guide than, like, a hard and fast rule. And basically everything I've said about this character so far, you should get that they would have a pretty desaturated palette, you know? Like, they're honestly pretty gloomy. Like, this is not a super happy character in the beginning, and this is the design that they start the show off with, and I would honestly love the opportunity to have them just get more vibrant as the series goes on, like both physically and mentally. I think that would just be like a really cool progression of how they've grown as a person. And yeah, that's another really important element too. Stuff to consider in your character design is, how does this character grow? Where do they start and where do they end? How can you, like, visualize that change? Another thing to consider with the coloring is just, what do the colors, like, kind of typically tell people, if that makes sense? Like, you kind of gotta, you look into color theory, you know, look into what colors are most immediately associated with which things. Like I said, you can use this as a guide and not, like, hard and fast rules, but you'll definitely notice this being used in, like, almost any character design you see that's, like, actually on a professional level. Let's see. I'm trying to think of examples. Okay, example. Bellows from Owl House. Look at this fucking guy. That's like, what? Okay, yeah, no, your first thought of those colors aren't gonna be like, yeah, this dude's probably gonna save the day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just kind of gotta, it's just, everyone just kind of inherently has, like, this, like, gut feeling about colors sometimes, and you really gotta, like, keep that in mind. Like, it really wouldn't serve Mavis well if she was just, like, drenched head to toe in black and red, like, Crowley style. It just would not match her character or her vibe at all, and it would make people looking at her assume that she's, like, a completely different person than she actually is. So yeah, that's pretty much it, honestly. My biggest advice would be to just be intentional. Know what you're doing, know what you're going for. Don't just make things because they're pretty. Everything should have a purpose, or most things, the big important things, they should have a meaning. They should be informed by the character themselves, their personality, who they are, how they grow, the story they're in. Just don't have it be only eye candy. Alright, so here she is! Here's Mavis! Yay! I'm way happier with this design. I'm really feeling it. I think she just looks awesome. She looks great. But maybe she'll change with time, evolve as a character, and I'll need to redesign her again. And that'll be awesome. That'll be okay too. There is no limit. For the comments, ramble about your own OCs. This is an absolute free-for-all. Just lay it on me. Or drop y'all's art fight links if you're participating. I like saving characters ahead of time to attack in July, so I'd love to see what y'all got. My own art fight link will be in the description as well in case y'all wanna, I don't know, draw Mavis skiing down a mountain of Fruit Loops. I don't fucking care, go wild. Or a third option, please tell me in the comments, somebody, anybody, if you want me to keep going full mask off with my ADHD and keep talking this fucking fast. I know, okay, so some people listen to these videos in the background of when they're doing things, but then some people are actually watching the video and they're kind of impatient and maybe they have ADHD too, and they're like, okay, get to the point. My brain works very fast. Come on, chop. So just let me know what do you want from me, all right? I am here at your disposal. Not in every single way. Just tell me how you want me to talk, please. Thanks for making it to the end. Hit like if you liked it, hit subscribe if you really liked it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!